Hello, I'm Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it.
In 2023, avian influenza had a devastating impact on elephant seals along the coast of Argentina. More than 17,000 of them, including 97% of pups, are believed to have died from the virus. It's an example of the devastating and unprecedented effect this virus has had on wildlife in recent years. WCS Wild Audio's Dan Rosen has the latest on its path and where it may be headed.
Highly pathogenic avian influenza, the virus we see making headlines around the world right now, first emerged in 1996 at a poultry production facility in southern China. At the time, a number of humans were infected, but the authorities there were able to curtail the outbreak with an aggressive culling of domestic birds. Over the years, though, the virus has evolved.
The big change came around 2021.
This is Dr. Christian Walzer, a wildlife veterinarian and the executive director of WCS's Global Health Program. At that time, Chris says, the virus developed the ability to circulate more easily among wild birds.
This is the time where we started hearing about massive die-off of gannets. Fishermen were going out 20 miles, fishing 20 miles offshore, and were reporting constant dead birds in the water or dying birds in the water. So that was the first time we basically saw it.
It's continued to challenge experts. Recently, Chris was surprised to see it infect and then reinfect cows in the U.S., a development that poses significant new danger. In particular, it allows avian flu to continue evolving, almost in secret, among this massive population of animals. This increases the chances it could become even more dangerous to humans.
It's always unclear how these viruses are going to mutate or reassort, right? If you're in a casino and you're playing a slot machine and you keep pulling that lever, right? You keep pulling it. And as you know, it's pretty rare to win, to get a jackpot or whatever it is, 5 lemons or whatever's got a line, right? But the point is, if you play enough, someone is going to win at some stage, right? And what we're seeing with these massive interfaces that have now developed is that we've just increased these chances. There are just so many more opportunities for the virus to mutate and reassort so that it can then better infect humans.
This is complicated by the fact that we aren't keeping close enough tabs on new developments, Chris says. We need better surveillance to track how the virus is changing. Particularly, he says, given this recent reinfection.
And this is one of the things that's really scary, is that once this, let's say the national cow herd in the United States has developed an immune response, it still is able to there's still this cryptic circulation possibility of the virus, and we don't know what's going on because you would have to really scale up your testing to understand what's happening with the virus, how is it changing.
What we need, Chris says, is better coordination across agencies, across states, and the federal government.
At the moment, the virus is using a receptor which is not very abundant in humans. So it's only able to bind on a receptor which is not that abundant in the upper respiratory tract, in the eye, but not in the lower respiratory tract. But it's only a single point mutation for it to acquire the ability to then bind and replicate in a very, very abundant human receptor.
That's the big worry for us, Chris says. But even if avian flu doesn't evolve in that dangerous way, if we don't hit the 5 lemons, to use Chris's analogy, it's already blazing a devastating trail through the wild.
Now, this is definitely unprecedented, especially on the avian scale. Also, the impact on wild birds, just these tens of millions, and that's probably a pretty conservative guess, right? Because we just don't know. There's no rigorous monitoring going across wild bird deaths. But tens of millions and more, right, of wild birds have already died. And then I think we should never forget as well that, there's 400 million heads of poultry or poultry which have been killed, right?
So what can we do as individuals? One thing Chris suggests is steering clear of any dead birds you come across in your daily life and notifying the authorities.
I would also say, don't drink unpasteurized milk, right? Why would you drink something that potentially has a very high viral load when over 900 herds of cattle in the United States are now infected?
Ultimately, Chris says, we must not ignore the global biodiversity impacts to birds and mammals. For WCS Wild Audio, I'm Dan Rosen.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Dan Rosen, with help from Hannah Kaplan and Nat Moss. The WCS Wild Audio Podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts.